This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
Welcome, gather round the fireside and listen to a tale of Fionn Mac Cumhaill, Deirdre of the Sorrows, Gráinne Wail. From giants right down to fairies, of both the trooping and solitary, and those who are sometimes scary. Anything goes by the fireside. Yeah. Fireside, the Puka Fireside, the Marrow Fireside. Kings and queens fighting heroes, don't you run from the fun, there's no need to hide. Sit by the fireside. Fireside.
Hello and welcome to Fireside, the Irish storytelling podcast. Each episode of Fireside, we take a story from folklore mythology, we retell it, have a chat about the tale itself and about the craft, culture and history of storytelling. My name is Kevin C. O'Lahan. I am your host and your Fireside Bard. Welcome to episode 170 of Fireside. It is another little milestone for the podcast as we move into a new decade of episodes and indeed a new saga for this week. Today on the Irish Storytelling Podcast, we return to our old friend Fionn Mac Cumhaill and his warrior band, the Fianna, as we begin our look at a new saga, which is the great Battle of Ventry Harbour. But before that, a very big welcome to any new and indeed returning listeners to this podcast. If you're a returning listener, as always, thank you so much for your continued support. If you're a brand new listener, this is actually a great episode to listen to for the first time. See what you like. If you like it, why don't you head right back to the very beginning, over 100 and now 170 episodes ago, and see what we've been building up to on the journey of Fireside over the last 3.5 years. Ways you can support this podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at FiresideBard, or you can email me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com. Those are the best places to get in touch if you want to message me with any inquiries, be it business or personal, even just to say hi. You can, of course, tell a friend you're enjoying this podcast. It's a great way to keep Fireside spreading as far and wide around the globe as it can. You could, if you like the work, you could buy my poetry book, Garden Sea, a Neo-Myth of Home, which is my look at the religion, history and mythology of Ireland and of my home county of Wicklow, together with my own experiences of growing up there. You can buy that in paperback from the Head Stuff website or in Kindle version from Amazon. The links are always in the description below of the episodes. And the final way you can support the podcast directly is by joining Headstuff Plus over at headstuffpodcast.com, where for as little as €5 a month, although you can pay more if you so choose, you can gain access to bonus material, not just for Fireside, but for all of the podcasts on the Headstuff Podcast Network, and there are more of them each and every month. Those are all the cells out of the way. Now we can get down to the meat and two veg. Let's get down to the story. This is one that's been on the horizon for a good long while. It escaped our original look at the Fionn cycle, which is in the very first year of this podcast. It was the second cycle we ever looked at. So from about episode 12, I remember I was in America in 2019 recording most of the episodes of the Fionn cycle. And as I sit here today, it is May 2022, so like this is a good while, and this is really, it feels so good to be returning to Fionn Mac Cumhaill, especially after the incredibly fascinating and interesting and rewarding experience that was looking at Gráinne Wail, Ireland's pirate queen, over the past couple of months. But that was an immense challenge, especially considering it was a historical person we were dealing with. Whereas returning to Fionn Mac Cumhaill is returning to the grassroots of this podcast. We haven't had a story about Fionn since we did the story of Fionn in the Old Man's House, when we were looking at Norse mythology, which is nearly about 2 years ago now, I think. So it's been a long time since we've met good old Fionn Mac Cumhaill. And this is a big saga that wasn't covered when we did the first look at the Fionn cycle, because it's not really a part of the original Fionn cycle. It's more of a newer story. By newer, I say that the first version of it was only written down in about the 1500s. Although, of course, like many of these tales, the oral tradition probably dated back hundreds of years on that. But it is also a big tale, so this will be one that'll be split into 3, possibly 4 episodes. I will try to make each of them as self-contained as possible so that you won't have to necessarily... Obviously, I hope everyone will listen to all of them, but I've tried to make it that these are very different tales and that they're telling different aspects of this story, because there's a lot of characters, there's a lot to tell, a lot that I've sifted through. Because another main reason why I hadn't looked at Ventry yet is I hadn't come across a good version of it that was extensive enough. I'd seen an awful lot of summaries online, but never a proper old translation of the original text. And I actually did find that online by a writer named John Hawkins Simpson from a book called Poems of Usheen the Bard and the Battle of Ventry Harbour, which I will put a link into the PDF of it. It was just all there. It has a lot of stories in it, translations of what were meant to be, yes, Usheen, who's Fionn Mac Cumhaill son and member of the Fianna, who was the poet of the Fianna. He was the one who recorded all of the stories. There seems to be a few that we haven't looked at before, so this could be the beginning of a whole new look at Fionn Mac Cumhaill, which is incredibly exciting, especially 3.5 years into this podcast, whenever it feels like the world of mythology that I hadn't explored at the beginning, the more and more I cover of it. It's lovely. It's so rewarding when it just keeps opening further and further, and there's more and more to look at. And so with that, let's get down to this story. This is the very first part of our Ventry saga. This is Ventry, the King of the World, on Fireside. Ventry, the King of the World. In the time of the great king Cormac Mac Art, grandson of Conn of the 100 Battles, when Ireland was under the protection of the warrior clan known as the Fianna and their leader, the great and powerful Fionn Mac Cumhaill, there was a king in Rome named Dara Dun. Dara Dun had sailed the globe, conquering every land he came across, from as close as France, Greece and Spain to as far away as India and lands lost to time. Dara Dun had conquered so many lands that he was now known as the monarch of the globe, the king of the world. The king had dominion over all lands except one, a tiny windy island in the northeast Atlantic Ocean known as Eire. You might think that such a small nation as Ireland would be an easy victory for the mighty king of the world, but other nations were not under the protection of the Fianna. Other lands did not have Fionn Mac Cumhaill. So Dara Dun knew that Eire was the last bastion, the final piece of the puzzle, and it would be not so easily won. So the King of Kings gathered all the other rulers under his command and informed them that the armies of the world would sail for war with Eire. The King of the World asked, "Is there any among you who know where the best place to land and attack this Fenian land?" To everyone's surprise, the answer came in an Irish voice. "I do. My name is Glas MacDravan." "You are Irish yourself," said Dara Dun. "Why would I trust you?" "I am Irish by birth, but Fionn Mac Cumhaill is no friend of mine. I used to hunt with the Fianna, and one day I caught more deer than Fionn himself. The Fenian leader is meant to be the greatest hunter in the world, so he didn't like that I outdid him. So Fionn began to ask around about me, and heard a rumour that I was planning to assassinate the High King Cormac Mac Art. For this Fionn banished me from my home. In my travels I have heard of you, Dara Dun, and I have come to join the army of the King of the World to have my revenge on Fionn Mac Cumhaill." Dara Dun took the counsel of the scorned Glas MacDravan. The Irish exile told the king that the best place to take Ireland was the southwest harbour of Ventry, in County Kerry, just outside the picturesque town of Dingle. Glas told the king, "If you anchor in Ventry harbour, you can hold supremacy with your entire fleet, and Kerry is far from where the Fianna are camped. Fionn Mac Cumhaill will be several days behind the fight, giving you a significant upper hand." Glas MacDravan then told Dara Dun of the Tua de Danann, the old gods of Eire, who had been displaced and driven underground by the mortal gales. Éire is no longer the dominion of the gods. They have no interest in the affairs of this land anymore. It is the place of mortal men. And now it shall be the place of the monarch of the earth, said the king of the world. The first barge to run into the sand of Ventry harbour was that of Dara-Dun, and the first army ashore was the 400 men led by the King of Spain. The Spanish began to indiscriminately wipe out villages and burn the coastline down so that fire and blood ran hot and red. Long before this invasion had begun, it had been foretold that Éire would be invaded by a multitude of the armies of the world. It was one of the main reasons the Fianna existed, a united army of mercenary warriors to protect their country from foreign enemies. But of course no one knew when this invasion would happen, or where the enemy would land. So Fionn Mac Cumhaill had stationed sentries of the Fianna at every port and harbour on the island, so that wherever the armies of the world landed, there would be a guard there to warn his brethren. The sentry at Ventry harbour was named Con Cruthar. Unfortunately, as Con had been stationed at the beautiful but never invaded Ventry harbour for so long, when the forces of Dara-Dun arrived, Con Cruthar was fast asleep. It was only when the armies of the King of Spain had set the harbour ablaze that Con was woken up by the sound of the women and children screaming. Con looked in ashamed horror at the massacre he had slept through. The Fianna man hastily put on his armour and vowed, "For this disgrace to the Fianna and to Éire, I forfeit my own life. But I will die fighting and take as many of these Spanish invaders down with me." Con Cruthar charged towards the beach, but he was intercepted by 3 young women. Con did not know in his rage if these women had been sent by Dara-Dun or by the King of Spain, so he drew his sword and demanded they get out of his way. One of the women said, "You will spill enough enemy blood today, Con Cruthar, without you slaying your own countrymen." "Who are you?" asked Con. "We are 3 women who each have loved you from afar. But despite our rivalry, we do not resent each other. And we are here to put an enchanted cloud over you that will protect you in battle. We also live by a well, and if you are injured at all, come to our well and let us cleanse you in its waters. You will be as whole as the day you were born." Bolstered by this affection of 3 women, and now under an enchanted cloud with the promise of a magic well, Con Cruthar charged into battle against the 400 men of the King of Spain. Every man fought bravely, but Con cut his way through each and every one until he got to the king himself. The Spanish king proved a stronger foe to Con than his men had been, but with one chance stroke, Con cut the head off the King of Spain. Stamping the bloodied, severed head into the sands of Ventry, Con Cruthar called out to the King of the world that he would stand and fight and kill any man until the arrival of Fionn Mac Cumhaill. Dara-Dun heard Con's claim and asked Glasc Mac if the warrior was Oscar, son of the poet Oisin and grandson of Fionn Mac Cumhaill. Glast said he would go ashore to find out. Con Cruthar was very surprised to watch a man who was unmistakably from Éire approach him on Ventry Beach, coming from the barge of Dara-Dun. "Who are you?" asked Glasc Mac of Con. "I am Con Cruthar of Clan Boscna of the Fianna. Who are you, and what has caused a man of Éire to betray his own people and fight for the King of the world?" "My name is Glasc Mac, and if you are who you say you are, then we are family. I did not want to leave Éire, but Fionn Mac Cumhaill threatened to kill me just because I was a finer hunter than he was, and maybe he heard that I wanted to assassinate the High King Cormac MacArt." Con Cruthar said, "Even though you have taken up arms against your own people today, if you join me and fight for the Fianna, I promise you not only will Fionn Mac Cumhaill spare your life, but you will be welcomed as one of his own." "I certainly will not take up arms against you," said Glasc Mac to his cousin, "and to prove myself, I will go and take my leave of the King of the world." It showed the fear and respect that Glas truly had for Fionn Mac Cumhaill, that he would betray Éire and lead the armies of Dara Dun to destroy the country, that he would so easily swap sides again. Yet at great personal risk, Glas Mac Dravin returned to the barge and told the King of the World, "I cannot take up arms against my own family. I ask for your leave to fight with the Gaels." Dara Dun found he strangely respected Glas Mac Dravin for coming before him. Also, the king had already got all he needed out of this one man. Glas had led the armies of the world to a strategic point of Éire's shores. Dara Dun could take it from here himself. The king granted permission, but just before Glas left the ship, he said one more thing. "Also, if you wouldn't mind, could the next forces that you send ashore be that of the King of the Straits? He greatly insulted my people when you asked for his services, and the king said that he could defeat the Fianna and Fionn himself. Obviously, I never said anything before because Fionn was my enemy and you were my ally. But as long as I am fighting with the Gaels, I would like to fight and kill the King of the Straits." Dara Dun said he would send the army of the King of the Straits ashore next if Glas Mac Dravin agreed to come back ashore every night and inform Dara Dun of what had happened in battle that day. Glas agreed and took his leave. Now back ashore with his cousin and new ally, Glas and Conn stood on Ventry Strand facing out towards the enemy. The next wave of 800 strong, led by the King of the Straits, came ashore. It was 2 against 800, but it was 2 of the Fianna. 2 cousins at that, who were on home soil and had a cause to fight for. Conn cleaved his way through every foot soldier as Glas Mac Dravin fought his way to find the King of the Straits himself. Once he found the king, Glas said, "So your armies can defeat the Fianna all by themselves, can they? Look what just 2 of us have done to you this day." And Glas Mac Dravin cut the head of the King of the Straits clean off. As the last of the latest wave of enemies were stabbed into the sand, the messenger of Fionn Mac Cumhaill arrived at Ventry on his routine rounds of Éire. The messenger was horrified and excited by what he saw. Horrified by the bloodshed, but so excited to finally have an invasion to report to Fionn Mac Cumhaill. The friend-turned-foe-turned-friend, Glas Mac Dravin, told the messenger to ride as quickly as he could to Fionn Mac Cumhaill and tell him that the armies of Dara Dun, the king of the world, were at Éire's shores. "Also," said Glas, "ride for the kingdom of my father." "Who is your father?" asked the messenger. "He is Bo Darragh, current king of the Tuatha De Danann. They normally will not fight with the mortal Gaels, but perhaps they will unite with us against the armies of the world." The messenger said he would go, but not before seeing some action himself and fighting for the Fianna. Conn Cruthar then asked Glas Mac Dravin to guard the beach while he returned to the promised enchanted well where he would heal his wounds. The messenger and Glas Mac Dravin stood and awaited another wave of another army of another king, and the young man proved himself capable of delivering much more than messages. He delivered deadly strokes of sword and spear until more heads and blood were mixed with the foam of Ventry Strand. The messenger then took his leave and rode to give the message of war to both Fionn Mac Cumhaill and the Tuatha De Danann. Glas Mac Dravin was left alone at Ventry Harbour, guarding his own people, whom he had betrayed by inviting the armies of the world to Éire's shores. But his conscience was clear. He would make amends and fight alongside the Fianna, or he would die trying. To be continued. This week's episode has a sponsor. I'm absolutely delighted to be sponsored this week by the International Literature Festival in Dublin and the Dublin Literary Award. It's always, of course, incredibly nice to have sponsorship on this podcast, and especially for something that I'm so interested in endorsing. I'm sorry to miss the Literature Festival this year as I'm away in Australia. But here's the ad for an award for a festival I would love to be a part of, an award who knows that I would like to win. This is the ad for the Dublin Literary Award 2022.
Dublin Literary Award 2022, the most valuable award for writing and translation in the world, will announce its 27th winner on May 23rd. Stories by French, Irish, Michisagi Nishnabeg, Alderville First Nation Canadian, New Zealand and Nigerian authors have been chosen by library patrons all over the world, the people who know books best. For tickets to the Winner in Conversation event, go to dublinliteraryaward.ie.
Fad Camp is a comedy podcast about the ridiculousness of fad diets and diet culture, hosted by me, Grace Mulvey.
And me, Connor Dowling. If you have a body of any kind, chances are you've crossed paths with at least one of the bizarre diet trends we cover in our show.
And between me and Connor, we have done nearly every fad diet there is.
Juice cleansing,
fasting,
the potato diet.
Which is actually a real diet, by the way, and we don't recommend it.
So join us as we try to make sense of the madness that is diet culture.
Find Fad Camp everywhere you get your podcasts and make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Fad Camp Podcast.
And that is the first part of the Battle of Ventry. That is the story of the King of the World on Fireside. And I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, it feels so good to be talking of Fionn Mac Cumhaill again. And Fionn Mac Cumhaill is not even in this episode. This is all this establishment of this great war coming towards, this justification for the existence of a warrior band like the Fianna in the first place. Because in stories in the Fenian cycle, there are numerous allusions to Viking invasions and people coming from ashore, but mostly it's a lot of internal politics, the internal politics of Fionn's ascendancy to the ruler of the Fianna, his relationships with his son, with his grandson, with his love Sive, with the girl he was meant to marry, Deirdre, and her running off with, Diarmid and Grania, but nothing like this, nothing that would really prove to unite the Fianna against a foreign enemy, and much less an army of the entire world. I love that it's Dara Dunn is this king of Rome and has conquered everything, when like for a time it was looking like Rome was going to conquer absolutely everything and did conquer the known world. And it's incredible to see that manifested in this story, like any nation's mythology that puts its own culture and its own people as, you know, the greatest in the world. And this justification of this tiny, tiny little island, never invaded at this point, and especially during the ancient Roman times when Ireland was known as Hibernia, which was the land of always winter, and it was a land that Julius Caesar never made it to. So Ireland did remain unconquered by the Romans. But for this tiny little island to be the last point in the entire world that the King of the World conquers is such an incredible setup for a mythic story. And the justification being that, like, around the world they've heard of Fionn Mac Cumhaill, this incredible warrior and this leader of this biker gang, essentially, that was the Fianna, and for this to be the final wave. The main character, of course, in this first episode is the very interesting Glas McTraven, who we're introduced to as a traitor, as an enemy. He's this Grima Wormtongue kind of figure where he has betrayed the Fianna because he hunted better than Fionn, and then Fionn asked around about him, and then he was apparently about to assassinate Cormac McCart, the High King. Never actually said whether or not he was. Presumably he was. If he seems like a kind of sneaky character who'll swap sides willy-nilly, it's not hard to believe that he was going to assassinate the king. So for this he is banished and feels greatly hard done by for this, so joins the armies of the King of the World and decides to land on Ventry Strand. Now Ventry Harbour is a place I have actually been, which is really nice to root. It's always nice when I can root something visually in any of these stories, if it's a place I've actually been. Which is just outside the perfect town of Dingle in County Kerry, as far southwest as you can drive down in Ireland. It's you know, it is. I don't need to big up Dingle at all. Everyone who's ever been there, or anyone who's even thought about coming to Ireland, has nearly always heard about Dingle, and it lives up to absolutely everything. It is the village that looks like how I think people think Ireland looks like, and it's incredibly well preserved. It is naturally like incredibly touristy now, but still, if you get there at the right time, even the right time of day, it's still so well preserved. From its pubs to its food, the beautiful seafood you can get there, to the absolutely breathtaking landscape that is the bay there. And as you look out over the CLXX Islands, where most recently the Star Wars movies were made, the island that Luke Skywalker is on in the country of Octu, or the planet of Octu, that is CLXX Michael, which is the largest of the CLXX Islands. And all of those little huts that the little fish nun lads on that island live in, those are all actually there, and they have been for hundreds, if not over 1,000 years. So it's just absolutely breathtaking, and go there if you haven't. And but it's great to be able to visualize that this was the spot that was decided as the vantage point to take the Fianna, because the Fianna would be up in Leinster towards like the east, so this would be a good bit away and a good chance for the armies of the King of the World to gain military supremacy. And we made this new figure of the Fianna, Cumhaill, who's not someone that we've encountered really in any of the other stories. He's not like a prominent member of the Fianna like Conan Whale or anything like that, or Cuilcha, the runner. But he is very prominent in this because he turns out to be a family member to Glas MacDravan, and Glas MacDravan goes ashore and finds that he can't take up arms against his family, and Cumhaill says, listen, you betrayed us, but if you fight with us now, Fionn will forgive you. And Glas just goes, yeah, absolutely. It shows he either really doesn't believe in the cause of the King of the World can defeat Fionn Mac Cumhaill, that he would so easily take the opportunity. It's like, oh, if I can get off scot-free for this, absolutely, I will put all my eggs in the Fianna basket. And then he fights bravely, and he goes back. This is my favourite part in the story. He goes back and asks his leave of the king, and the king lets him. As long as he said, you be my spy, you be my scout, and just report to me. Just say what's happened, not even like... Just say who's alive, who's dead. Like, give me the blow by blow, the commentary of the match each day, and then fine, fight for whoever you want, which is incredible in its in the king knowing what the best use out of this one person could be, and his confidence and his arrogance in his own forces that he so easily lets. Like who proves to be a very, very incredible warrior, as he immediately joins the Fianna ranks of being able to wipe out hundreds of people single-handedly. And a big thing in the saga is everyone gets the head cut off. Big thing in Ventry, especially these kings. Got to cut the head off. It's like they're a zombie invasion. Got to destroy that brain. And I love this image of Cumhaill stamping the severed head of the King of Spain into the sands of Ventry. That's probably my favourite image in it. And then we get this messenger arrive at the end, seeing what's going on and going, okay, I'll run off and tell everyone, but I want some action myself. So he gets in on the action as well and fights another wave before running off to finally bring Fionn Mac Cumhaill into the story, and also to tell the Tuatha Dé Danann. So it's very interesting that the Tuatha Dé Danann are here, of course, but they don't hold dominion. They have no love for the mortals, even though they are related to a lot of them. Fionn is part Tuatha Dé Danann himself, and they are not interested. So it's the, can we bring this Deus Ex Machina? Can we bring these gods into the fight? Because they ultimately might be the only people who could be the deciding factor. And this was quite hard. As difficult as the Gráinne Whale stuff was to adapt, there was actually quite nice breaks. There was quite natural places I could break it up. How the chapters were broken up in the book I adapted from Anne Chambers' book on Grace O'Malley. made it at least easier to see where the episodes would begin and end. Ventry flows quite a lot, and it flows in a meandering kind of way. I mean, things are just kind of left and never brought back up again, like in a lot of the versions of these myths. But it became harder it flows so nicely into each other. It became harder to break it up and try and make these individual stories. But this seemed like the best place. Like, we've had 3 waves, these 3 characters, and it seemed like a nice place to end it before Fionn Mac Cumhaill is brought into the fray. But with that, I will wrap things up for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're even a tiny bit as excited as I am to be back with our old friend Fionn Mac Cumhaill in this wonderful, wonderful new section. I look forward to seeing what happens over the next couple of weeks with this story. As always, let me know what your thoughts are, how you're enjoying it, if this is a story you know, if these are versions you've heard of. Always let me know. I love hearing from each and every one of you. Next week, we're going to keep our normal formula. We're going to go back to a folk tale next week. We've a great story called Little Paddy and the Weasel, but I found this really great old school fairy tale. And then the week after that, we'll have part 2 of Ventry, and we'll go back and forth with that over the next couple of weeks for the 3, most likely 4 episodes on the Battle of Ventry, and then stories intermingled, and then we'll see how we go after that. But I'm currently in a place called Dubbo in New South Wales, still on tour with the World of Musicals. We're well into the tour now, still having an absolute ball. We're having a great time out here, heading to Canberra, the country's capital, tomorrow. Another day off there. So I was just getting my 1-2 episodes of the podcast recorded, trying keeping on top of things as we go on. But yes, I will wrap things up there. So please do follow me over on Instagram if you haven't done so already. Email me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com or get me at firesidebard on Instagram. Buy my poetry book, Garden Seat. Thank you so much to everyone who continues to do so. There's more going out every week all over the world. I sent one to Chicago this week. Last week I sent one to Minneapolis, which is Bob Dylan country. So it was basically like sending a book to Bob Dylan. It made me very, very happy to send one to Minnesota. If you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so over at headstuffpodcast.com, where you can join Headstuff Plus, and where for as little as €5 a month, or you can pay more if you want, you can gain access to bonus material. As I'm distracted now because I just want to make it clear, I know Bob Dylan was from Duluth, Minnesota specifically, just in case anyone thinks I just thought he was generally from the city. Don't know why I felt just the compulsion to say that, but just don't at me on that one. I'll see you all. You'll hear me all next time. And remember, wherever you are and wherever you go, you can always join me by the fireside.
This show is part of the Headstuff Podcast Network, a hub for the creative and the curious. Shows are produced in association with Headstuff and the Podcast Studios Dublin. Find out more or become a member at headstuffpodcasts.com.